This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I'm beyond thrilled and privileged to be welcoming back to our community today quite a well-known voice on LinkedIn himself and with his own global community. This was actually a guest we've had on previously, we think about 2020, and somebody that I've got to know very well on many levels over the last few years. I'm delighted to welcome to you today Cal Winterbottom, who is the founder of Orbition Group and who's joining us today to talk about a multitude of things and share his insights with us. So welcome to you today, Kyle. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. 2 years. It's gone quick, hasn't it?
2 years. It is 2 years. But I mean, we met many, many years ago in my other job as a Rex Rec. And then obviously we joined as cohorts on the Hoxo Personal Brand Academy. It was about 2020, wasn't it?
October 2020. Yeah.
And we both graduated from there with flying colours. I think you and I were like level peg in terms of consistent performance, I think. We'll have to ask Sean who the outright winner was. Now, there might be, believe it or not, under the rock of the global community, which I think, you know, we talked off camera about the number of countries where we've got listeners between us, which is phenomenal. But for those who are not yet familiar with your business and who you are, give us a little headline as to what you do.
Yeah, no problem. So I've been in recruitment, 11, 12 years now. Started my career at S3, working in business intelligence and data. Was fortunate enough to move to Dubai to help them launch a contract business out there. Then we moved to New York. Then we came back. So yeah, been around the block a little bit, and then set Orbition up September 2020, right in the midst of lockdown. And effectively, we're a boutique talent solutions business, operates exclusively in the world of data and analytics, headquartered in Manchester, but work across the UK, Europe, and the US. Mainly at mid to senior level, so we don't really do anything junior or entry level. Lowest salary is probably 50 odd K up into the kind of exec search regions then, really. So yeah, that's kind of lean to two sides. So the exec search side for kind of leadership appointments, and then almost like mini RPO type of arrangements for scaling teams. So we kind of work on an exclusive retained basis, where it might be 40, 50 hires over a 12-month period, or 20 hires over a 6-month period, or whatever the case may be.
Quite a brilliant business model, if I may say so myself. And don't forget as well, you're also a fellow podcast host. Tell us a little bit about Driven by Data.
Yes. So, I mean, I was fortunate enough before I started Orbition to kind of get into the realms of events and podcasting. So that became the kind of launch pad, if you like, of when I started the business, that I was going to build everything from that, and kind of build a community that gave value back to that community, and hopefully the rest of it would kind of take care of itself. So yeah, Driven by Data, the podcast, we launched in October 2020. We did 50 episodes in season 1, 50 episodes in season 2. We're into episode 6 or 7 of season 3 now. And we've got over 17,000 listeners in 124 different countries as it currently stands. So yeah, to be honest with you, it blew up into something much bigger than I ever anticipated it would do.
Well, that's, as a fellow podcast host, I mean, first of all, I applaud you. That's phenomenal in terms of your listeners and in terms of your global reach. Who knew there were that many countries? But on a serious note, because you're consistent, you've just said there yourself, I think they always say the magic number is 50 episodes, because I think then it proves that you're kind of consistently putting content out there. And I imagine it gets you much closer to your community. You're speaking to those who your community want to hear from, the industry leaders, right? They're sort of learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I was looking at doing it, and we decided to split it into seasons, because I don't know, I think it's more of a personal preference, but you see some podcasts and it's like episode 378, and I'm kind of like, there's no way anyone's starting at 1 from that, right? Whereas chunks of 50 kind of felt a little bit more manageable to me. So yeah, but obviously not all my doing. We have a team in the background that helps edit and promote and all the social stuff as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you gave a shout out to your amazing team, some of whom obviously we know on a professional and personal level. So that's amazing. So going back to Orbition, you've obviously built a global business, and you've managed to do that through no actual cold calling as such. So for those listening who might go, what, how have you done that? And what was the reason you've set your business up like that?
So if I'm being really candid, the reason that kind of notion started for me was I'd been out of the country for probably 4 or 5 years. I'd been off the tools from a billing perspective for probably a similar amount of time. And when I first came back to the country, I started to look at how people were kind of just operating. So I don't know what you're like, right? But if my mobile phone rings, even if it's a mobile number that I don't know, I don't answer it, right? So there was that. But then I was also thinking, if I'm being really candid, do I have the engine of building something from scratch to be, trying to smash through switchboards? Probably helped by the fact that we were sat in the middle of a lockdown in COVID. So calling business lines probably wasn't the best use of time anyway. So the approach, was really simple. It was, how can I create something that people would want to be a part of and be associated with, and C, would give us leverage into conversations that we wanted to be having. And that's kind of where, we just kind of rolled with the podcast and the events, and and the rest kind of took care of itself, really.
I think, I think it's so it wasn't necessarily by design, but I really applaud your honesty and openness there, because as somebody that's also been doing it a very long time, the thought of doing something new from scratch and having to find, what was it in the engine, just finding that energy to want to do it when you know how brutal it is getting through gatekeepers and cold calling. So I love that that's your perception of it. And actually, I agree with what you've just said there as well, which is why I think that in the truest sense, cold calling somebody without a reason to, or an introduction to, I never take a cold call. I literally, I'm renowned for it. I'll literally send a text going, I'm sorry, I'm busy. Who is this, please? And then whether it's somebody that you actually want to speak to. Sometimes they don't reply, which then it's just a random cold call that had no purpose. And other times it's, oh gosh, I've been passed your number by so-and-so. Carl from Orbition said you're great. Can you give me a call? And I'm like, absolutely, call you straight back. So yeah. I think I'm glad you used that analogy, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's even, I don't know what you're like, but my my voicemails on my phone are terrible. Like, if because I just get that much spam, I don't even listen to them. So it's, I just think the way people use their phone and interact has changed, and it all kind of went digital and social, really.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm renowned for it. Clearly, that shows how you and I communicate on WhatsApp. That's what we do. We're the voice note king and queen of Manchester, I think. But it's true. And my actual answer phone on my actual phone says, I don't listen to voicemails. If you want me, drop me a WhatsApp and I'll respond. And occasionally somebody will go, I know you don't listen. And I'm like, I literally just delete it. You're not listening to me. Well, then you find you've got 27. You're never going to have 27 candidates sat there in your inbox, are you? No, I think that's really insightful. And I think, you definitely read the room right, actually, whether it was by design or not, that, what your market clearly has responded to, which is why you have grown so significantly, both from a business point of view, but also from a community point of view, is that your approach has been different. So have you got any, our audience is very clearly split into, from the feedback we get, leaders, we say aspiring leaders, and those recruiters who are trying to build their own, I guess, their own personal, desk and following. Is there any advice for anyone in 2023 as to what maybe you would do differently, or what they should replicate from how you've built your business?
Well, I think the first thing to probably mention is that the concept of a cold call is that when people pick up the phone to you, they don't know who you are, right? So I think that was the fundamental thing that I was trying to change, and I've been trying to make sure changes for the people that I employ, right? So it's not a case of saying we're never going to cold call, because our business does, right? Especially more so on the candidate side, obviously. But I think the whole purpose behind that is to kind of build that brand and reputation, so that when someone does call them, it's a little bit warmer, right?
Yeah,
I think I think the key thing to all of that, there's a few things to it, but consistency for sure, right? I think I see so many businesses start this journey, right, and ultimately after a couple of weeks or months kind of just fall off the wagon with it because they're expecting an immediate return, and it doesn't work like that, right? So you've got to be consistent with it for sure, and ultimately I think if you're looking at this as how can I add value and being genuine with that, like how can I create something that adds values to people's lives and professional careers, that'll take you practically all the way, right? If you're doing this exclusively because you want to use it as a mechanism to get hold of people, then you'll run out of steam with it and they'll run out of steam with it. So I think that'd probably be the biggest bit of advice I'd say, is just you've got to do it for the right reasons and you've got to do it consistently.
Yeah, I think that's just the message generally here. Just be consistent in what you're doing without a shadow of a doubt. So, in terms of, I guess you've covered that in terms of pitfalls, but you mentioned that before you set up Orbition, you'd obviously been involved with a lot of community-based, events and podcasts. How do you see that changing in terms of, how your market, whether it's specific to the data and analytics market or just generally speaking, how should we be involving, I guess, a more holistic approach to how we're building our brands as recruiters?
Well, I think that goes back to the kind of quest to be able to add value, right? I think, historically, recruitment has seen its value add in presenting the best opportunities and or the best candidates, right? And obviously that is part of the puzzle, right? Because you can build the best brand in the world, but if you can't execute and deliver for your clients, you're equally not going to last very long. So it's not it's got to be both sides of the coin, but for sure.
But
yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one. It's about getting the balance. I think you've just got to, what adds value to them, and the concept of thought leadership. If you can be seen as that connector between, the value that people are getting and the source that you're getting it from, and you can kind of become pivotal as that mechanism for that to happen. That's been where we've had all of our wins as a business. Most of our business, practically all of our business comes inbound to us, and it's not just job ones and twos in terms of jobs here and there. We've signed hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of probably millions of pounds worth of retainers based on clients who we're not connected with on LinkedIn, have never spoken to before, come to us, and because they've said, we've seen your stuff on LinkedIn, blah blah blah. So it works, but again, it's consistency and doing it for the right reasons.
And also, you used the expression there, which a lot of people find a bit of a pet hate, but I have yet to find one that replaces it, this thought leadership concept. You don't set out to become a thought leader. Yeah. You don't. You become that expert voice. That's maybe an alternative because of all the other things that you've said that you've done. So it is building the relationships. It is actually delivering the best opportunity and the best candidate. It is, in fact, giving that value through your podcast, events, whether it's newsletters. There's so many different ways you can do it, providing, data on whatever it might be. But you don't actually set out to become a thought leader. You become one because of all the other bits. So I just had to make that point actually, because it does get overused a little bit, doesn't it, on LinkedIn? Yeah. So that's that. I really appreciate your pragmatic response there, actually, because I think people think they can just come in and I'll just spend a load of time doing all this, and they're not doing all the other intricate parts of it.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point, right? And we have this conversation internally quite a lot, right? We've managed to build something which gives us a leg up. I think that, and ultimately it's nothing more than that. Yes, we've had inbound work that's come to us, and we get quite a lot of it. That's a great place to be, but there's only so much scale and sustainability within that, right? So ultimately, it's a mechanism for you to be known in the market, to make those calls or those messages a little bit warmer. Yep. But beyond that, you still got to go about your normal recruitment activity. It's we're not doing anything different on the back end. We're still, excuse me, still mapping markets, we're still identifying decision makers, we're still getting them on a CRM, we're still coding them, etc.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think it's important that we bear in mind that vanity can be the undoing of a lot of people. So I'm glad you made that point. Now, you're obviously in the data space. And I think, again, reading the room of recruitment, I think that more and more we're using data ourselves and analytics ourselves to improve our performance. So, I mean, how do you think, and there is a definite love-hate relationship with it, because generally speaking, recruiters are quite salesy, so they just want to go out and do it. So how do you think we can benefit from using data to our advantage?
Well, I don't think recruitment is different to any other industry that's using data, right? So the party line here is that organizations use data to try and make more informed decisions that they can then take an action on. That's ultimately what it is. And I think that's, the simplicity of that is probably why I enjoy this market so much, because, I have thousands of conversations every year through the day job and the podcast. And ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's how can us as a business improve performance? So increase sales or revenue or make our process more efficient. And what would every recruitment business on the world like to do? Just that, right? So I think it's about utilizing the data that you can capture, but then ultimately, obviously, using that and taking action from it, because having data is one thing, doing something with it is another, right? So we have a big focus around quality. That's been our thing, right? So we, as with every recruitment business, of course we measure activity in terms of metrics and numbers of CVs and interviews and jobs and so on and so forth, but we focus more of our data on the kind of qualitative component. So conversions, right? So as an example, if someone's got a really high CV to placement ratio, well, somewhere in the middle is something going wrong, right? Which then can allow you to dig deeper, look into things and make improvements. So I think that the term KPI often gets bashed about in recruitment, right? Because, we don't have a KPI environment. I think if you're using it for the right reason, then, data is just another KPI.
It is.
If you're in an environment where you're doing something just for the sake of doing it to appease a certain metric, then that's, in my opinion, probably the wrong way to be using it. But,
You should be the oracle for recruitment then, because first and foremost, we all have KPIs. It's a key performance indicator. That doesn't mean call times. It doesn't mean how long you stood up ringing, cold calling somebody. It is the measure. I still KPI myself after 24 years. But I'm more interested in, and second point, on quality, because for me, it's all about those ratios. It's all about the efficiency. If you've got somebody that's sending out 20 CVs to get a placement, they are not sending out quality CVs. It's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. So I think more people listening, certainly those recruiters, definitely recruiters listening, that's how you become an expert recruiter. It's on quality. You still need to do the quantity of speaking to lots of candidates, arranging lots of interviews for lots of candidates, but it's, think about, the efficiency of what you're doing, and then it's time, isn't it? It's working smarter. So I'm really pleased I asked you that, actually, because, and I love that your passion really came out there about why you like talking to data people. So that's good. You said in your intro, and, I'm sure there'll be lots of people getting, possibly dusting down their passport thinking, well, now the world has opened up again, I want to explore the global market and potentially either get sponsored or even move it internally with their current company. So what would your advice be to, first of all, to any recruiter that's potentially going to move abroad, and then also to leaders who are trying to optimize the digital nomad sort of concept?
Oh, good question. Well, so I think on a personal level, if anyone ever gets the opportunity to do it, then take it with both hands. I think, it can be, it's difficult because, I personally think that one of the key factors for someone being a good recruiter is to be in a market for a consistent period of time. That's where you then start to get to, you talk about a brand and a reputation. So getting up and jetting off to the other side of the world might seem counterintuitive to that, but I think there are a lot of benefits from a professional development standpoint to live a new life, to learn something new, to work in a new market, whatever the case may be. I think, holistically, that's probably made me a much more rounded recruiter, having had all of those experiences of working in different sectors and different parts of the world. So on a personal level, I'd say get out there and try it. From a leadership perspective on, hiring people in different parts of the world, I think the one big thing to look out for is the differences in kind of culture, and how people are used to operating and working, because that's been some of the things, probably the most eye-opening thing for me living and working abroad, is that just the pace that things might move at in certain parts of the world versus others, so how certain demographics will operate and how they live and what their expectations are and stuff like that. So I think that's probably the key thing, but that's probably equally said to recruiters as well, right? You're not going to pick up from Manchester or London and, go to, I don't know, Australia or Singapore or the US or Dubai or wherever you plan on going. It's going to be different. So, you've got to take that into consideration.
It's really, really good advice. And as somebody who didn't do what Kyle did, and as a more mature person in years, you should just go and do it. You genuinely only live once. You can always come back. Yeah. Just don't ever regret not doing something. Do you know what I mean? Got to go. So if you're listening to this now, go for it. Absolutely. That's been really, really insightful. And, we love watching you absolutely flourish. You deserve it. Your business and your podcast are just, you're always giving value, Carl. You really are. And you're just a wonderful human being as well. So thank you so much for giving time to us today and coming back on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.